The median household income in the United States is roughly $83,000 a year. That number is supposed to mean financial breathing room. It's supposed to mean stability, security, and the ability to handle life's inevitable surprises without everything falling apart. A car that breaks down, a medical bill, a broken water heater. These aren't catastrophes. They're just part of living. And yet, for a staggering number of American families earning that median income or even more, a single $1,000 emergency could be the difference between staying afloat and going under. According to the Federal Reserve, nearly 40% of Americans would struggle to cover an unexpected $400 expense without borrowing money or selling something. Not $4,000, not even $1,000, just $400. And when you scale that up to $1,000, the number gets worse. Roughly 60% of Americans don't have enough in savings to cover a $1,000 emergency without taking on debt. That's not the bottom 10% or 20%. That's the majority. So here's the question. How can a country with a median household income of $83,000, $1 of the wealthiest economies in human history, have built a system where most people are one broken transmission away from a financial crisis? What does that say about how we measure economic health? And what happens to families when that emergency actually hits? The demand for secure communication has never been higher, but what many people don't realize is that even encrypted messaging apps can leave digital fingerprints. Metadata, location data, and usage patterns can reveal more than the messages themselves. That's where our sponsor Cape comes in. Cape is a premium cell service provider designed with privacy and security as its core principles. Founded in 2022 by experts in telecom and cybersecurity, Cape uses advanced technology to change your online presence daily, so hackers and cellular networks can't keep track of your information. Most major carriers lease access to the infrastructure they use to provide service, but Cape actually owns its mobile core, adding an extra layer of security that most carriers don't even have the infrastructure for. This doesn't only apply to the US, but globally. So if you're hopping between countries, you keep the same level of protection as if you were on your local tower. Use our code EE33 for 33% off your first 6 months of Cape with the link in the description. Let's start with what a $1,000 emergency actually looks like. It's not extravagant. It's not a vacation gone wrong or an impulse purchase that backfired. It's ordinary life asserting itself. A car repair. The average cost to replace a transmission is between $1,800 and $3,400. Even a minor repair, new brakes, a battery, a sensor, can easily hit $500 to $1,000. A medical bill. The average emergency room visit costs around $2,200 without insurance. With insurance, depending on your deductible, you might still owe $1,000 or more. A broken appliance. A refrigerator, a furnace, a water heater. Replacing any of them runs $800 to $2,000. A dental emergency. Root canals, crowns, extractions. Even with insurance, out-of-pocket costs frequently exceed $1,000. These aren't luxuries. They're not discretionary expenses. They're the cost of maintaining the basic infrastructure of daily life. And for most American households, they arrive without warning. Now, the standard financial advice is simple. Build an emergency fund. Save 3 to 6 months of expenses. Keep it liquid. Keep it accessible. And in theory, that makes perfect sense. In practice, it's nearly impossible, because saving requires something most households don't have, which is money left over at the end of the month. So let's go back to our median income household earning $83,000 a year and see where that money actually goes. After federal income tax, payroll taxes, and state income tax, depending on where you live, take-home pay lands somewhere in the mid-$60,000 range. That's roughly $5,400 a month. Everything has to come from that. Housing comes first. For homeowners with a mortgage, the median household spends a little over 21% of income on housing nationally. But in high-cost areas like New York, California, and Washington, D.C., it's closer to 35% or more. For renters, it's worse. The median renter already spends about 31% of their income on rent, and roughly 12 million people spend more than half. For a median income family renting in a major city, monthly housing costs can easily run $2,000 to $2,500. Let's call it $2,300. That takes the monthly budget from $5,400 down to $3,100. Then there's transportation. The United States was built around the car, which means employment almost always requires one, usually two. When you factor in fuel, insurance, maintenance, registration, and financing, the average household spends about $800 to $1,000 per month. Let's say $900. Now we're down to $2,200. Next, healthcare. The average total premium for employer-sponsored family coverage in 2025 runs nearly $27,000 a year. Employers cover most of it, but workers still contribute around $6,800 annually, or about $565 per month, before they've seen a single doctor. And that's before deductibles, copays, or prescriptions. So now we're at $1,635 per month. Then there's childcare. Center-based care costs over $10,000 per child on average. In some states, it rivals in-state college tuition. For a two-parent household with two kids, you're adding another $1,600 to $2,500 per month. Even at a conservative $1,600, the budget is now down to $35 per month. And we haven't bought a single grocery, paid a utility bill, put gas in the car, or saved $1. Food at home for a family of four runs about $800 to $1,000 per month, depending on location and dietary needs. Utilities, internet, phone, electricity, water, add another $300 to $400. Clothing, school supplies, personal care, another $200. Suddenly, the household that earns $83,000 a year, the median, is running a deficit. There is no money left over. There is no cushion. There is no emergency fund. And this isn't a story about irresponsibility or poor planning. It's a story about a cost structure that has fundamentally changed while wages and safety nets have not kept pace. Because here's the thing. The advice to save for emergencies assumes discretionary income. It assumes there's something left after the essentials. But for most American families, the essentials now consume everything. And when an emergency hits, there's nowhere to pull the money from except debt. So what happens when that $1,000 emergency actually arrives? The first option is a credit card. According to the Federal Reserve, about 45% of Americans carry a balance on their credit cards month to month. The average interest rate on those balances is now above 20%. So a $1,000 emergency charged to a credit card at 20% interest, if paid off over a year, costs about $1,100 total. If it takes 2 years, it's closer to $1,200, and that's assuming no other charges get added in the meantime. The second option is a personal loan. Interest rates vary, but they typically range from 10% to 36% depending on credit score. A $1,000 loan at 15% over 1 year costs about $1,080 total. Better than a credit card, but still a markup on an expense that was unavoidable in the first place. The third option is a payday loan. These are short-term, high-interest loans designed to be repaid on the borrower's next payday. The average payday loan carries an annual percentage rate of nearly 400%. A $1,000 payday loan held for 2 weeks costs about $150 in fees. If it rolls over, those fees compound quickly. It's predatory by design, and it traps people in cycles of debt that are nearly impossible to escape. The fourth option is to skip something else. Delay the rent. Skip a car payment. Let a utility bill go unpaid. Each of those carries its own penalty. Late fees, reconnection charges, damage to credit scores. And once you fall behind, catching up becomes exponentially harder. So the $1,000 emergency doesn't just cost $1,000. It costs $1,000 plus interest, plus fees, plus the downstream consequences of whatever else had to be delayed or sacrificed to cover it. And it doesn't end there, because the real damage isn't just financial, it's psychological. Financial stress is one of the leading causes of anxiety, depression, and relationship conflict in the United States. It affects sleep, physical health, job performance, and decision-making. People under financial strain are more likely to make mistakes at work, more likely to get sick, and less likely to seek medical care when they need it. The emergency creates the debt. The debt creates the stress. The stress creates more problems, and the cycle continues. Now, you might be wondering, if this is such a widespread problem, why hasn't it been addressed? Why isn't there a safety net designed to catch people before they fall into debt over a $1,000 expense? The answer is that there is a safety net, sort of, but it's designed around an outdated understanding of poverty, and it leaves out the vast majority of people who are struggling. The official poverty line for a family of 4 is just over $31,000 a year. That number determines eligibility for Medicaid, food assistance, housing support, and tax credits. If you earn below that threshold, you qualify for help. If you earn above it, you're on your own. But as we've already established, a household earning $83,000 a year, more than double the poverty line, is not financially secure. They're stretched. And a household earning $50,000 or $60,000, still well above the poverty line, is even more exposed. These families don't qualify for assistance, but they also can't afford to absorb unexpected costs. They exist in what economists call the gap, the space between where help ends and where financial stability begins. And that gap is enormous. It includes tens of millions of American households who are working full-time, paying taxes and contributing to the economy, but who are one emergency away from crisis. And the safety net doesn't reach them. Not because they don't need it, but because the benchmark used to determine need was designed in the 1960s and hasn't meaningfully changed since. Back then, housing was affordable, healthcare was cheap, childcare wasn't a major expense, and a single income could support a family. None of that is true anymore, but the poverty line still assumes it is. So families in the gap have no choice but to rely on debt. Credit cards, personal loans, payday lenders, buy now pay later schemes. The financial system has built an entire infrastructure around the fact that millions of people can't afford to live on what they earn, and it profits from that gap. The average American household now carries about $7,000 in credit card debt. Collectively, that's over $1 trillion. And the interest on that debt, the fees, the penalties, they flow upward to banks and lenders while the families paying them fall further behind. It's not a bug, it's a feature. Now there have been moments when the system worked differently. During the pandemic, when stimulus checks went out and expanded unemployment benefits were in place, household savings spiked. The personal savings rate hit 32%, the highest ever recorded. For a brief window, millions of families had a cushion. They could cover an emergency without borrowing. They could pay down debt, they could breathe, and then the programs ended. The savings rate dropped back down, the debt came back, and the gap returned wider than before, because while people were saving, costs were rising, home prices surged, rents climbed. Mortgage rates more than doubled from under 3% to above 6%. Insurance premiums increased. Childcare costs continued their upward march. By the time the economy reopened, the cost of stability had gone up, and the safety net had gone back to where it was. So the question isn't whether Americans can save for emergencies. It's whether the structure of the economy allows them to. And right now, for most people, it doesn't. The math just doesn't work. You can't save $1,000 when there's nothing left at the end of the month. You can't build an emergency fund when every month is an emergency. And you can't plan for the future when the present is consuming everything you have. This isn't about individual failure, it's about systemic design, and the consequences are profound. When families can't absorb a $1,000 shock, they stop taking risks. They don't start businesses. They don't move for better jobs. They don't invest in education or training. they don't have children. Birth rates in the United States have been falling for years, and financial insecurity is consistently cited as one of the main reasons. People aren't confident they can afford the life they want, so they delay it or they don't pursue it at all. And the economy suffers as a result, because economic growth depends on risk-taking, on mobility, on investment in the future. And all of that requires a foundation of security. When that foundation doesn't exist, everything else becomes harder. So what would it take to fix this? The answer isn't simple, but it starts with acknowledging the problem. The cost of living has risen faster than wages. The safety net is built around an outdated benchmark, and the gap between where help ends and where stability begins is swallowing millions of families. Fixing it would require updating the poverty line to reflect actual costs, expanding eligibility for assistance programs, raising wages to match the real cost of participation in the economy, regulating the interest rates and fees that trap people in debt, and building a healthcare, childcare, and housing system that doesn't consume the majority of household income before anything else gets paid. Those are big structural changes, and they won't happen overnight. But until they do, the reality remains the same. For most American families, a $1,000 emergency isn't just an inconvenience, it's a threat. And the system that's supposed to catch them isn't built for the world they're actually living in. Thank you for spending some time with me on this episode of Northville Institute. If this video made you realize that the real crisis isn't always low income, but how expensive basic stability has become, then you've understood why so many families feel trapped. Until next time, take care of yourself, have a great week, and I'll see you in the next video.